Inspire Instructor podcast, where the learning never stops. Welcome, you wonderful people, and thanks for listening to Inspire Instructor Training Podcast. Got a great episode for you today, all about how we teach road safety. And road safety is basically the crux of what we do as driving instructors in whatever way we can do that, whether it is teaching safety systems or whether it is posting on social media, and we dig into resources that we can use and training aids and how you deliver that road safety on your driving lessons through coaching or through materials that you can use, like The Honest Truth. I'm joined today by Terry Cook of the Instructor Podcast. Now, I actually forgot to give Terry a chance to plug himself at the end of the episode, so I'm going to do it for him before we kick off. So you can find Terry at theinstructorpodcast.com and on social media, and also you can find Terry's podcast as well, which I am one of the biggest fans that he has, so I fully would recommend everything Terry does. So go and give Terry a listen and head over to his website. And also, we're talking about road safety today, so I think I would particularly suggest going to have a look at Terry's new project, which is driving instructors to Vision Zero. So yeah, go and check out what Terry has on offer. But for now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the podcast, Terry Cook from the Instructor Podcast. So thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Phil. Always a pleasure.
So when I decided I was gonna do an episode on road safety, I couldn't think of anyone better than the man who's just done an excellent series on his own podcast about road safety. So yeah, you were my number one choice, and we had to go. So my first question though for you, Terry, then is, why should we be teaching road safety?
I mean, I could think of about 10 people better to have on the podcast than me, but I'll take the compliment. Why should we be teaching road safety? I mean, we don't want people to die. That has to be the core of it. We don't want people to die on the roads after a driving test. But I think part of that comes into, what do we mean when you say why should we be teaching road safety? Because I think as instructors we are. Even the excuse this phrase, but even the worst of us, even the instructors that turn up late or cut short lessons and shout with their students and accidentally brush their students' thigh, they're still teaching road safety, because at some point they will tell the student how the brake pedal works. And therefore the student is now safer because they know how to stop a car. So even at that very minimal level, we're still teaching it. So it's in terms of what we mean by road safety. And I think for me, it's the bigger picture. It's everything. It's not just teaching a student how the brake works. So why is it important to look at everything? Well, it's because it's not just about teaching people how a car works. If you go back and look at some of the previous episodes you've done on this series, Phil, and I'm specifically thinking about the ones with Emma Cottington and Lee Sperry, when you ask them how to teach reversing or roundabouts, they didn't tell you how to teach reversing or roundabouts. They spoke about the conversations they have and the questions they ask the students. And it's important to do that, because that's what creates thinking drivers, which ultimately is going to reduce the number of particularly young people down UK roads, because, currently there's 5 a day on average people die, and we want to get that down to 0.
So yeah, I think what I'm hearing there is the road safety, or teaching road safety, is a bit of maybe a spectrum of from press the brake pedal to deep conversations about post-test driving and being safe, and I suppose even beyond that, maybe even campaigning and situations like that. So where do you think the average instructor should be sat on that spectrum?
The average instructor. So, I mean, for me, it falls into 3 categories. So just to kind of clarify that spectrum in what I believe it is, you've got someone teaching you how to brake. And then, as you said, you've got the campaigning, you've got all the resource you provide, you've got the different situations and motorway driving, that kind of stuff, and the conversations anywhere between there. I don't think that the average instructor should be sat anywhere. I think it depends on the individual. So what I mean by that is, there will be driving instructors out there that are in this job to do a 9 to 5. They're not in this job because they care passionately about helping people learn to drive. When I became an instructor, I didn't become an instructor thinking, oh, how exciting. I get to help develop these people and then I get to make safe drivers and improve road safety on you. It wasn't that. It was, oh, that sounds like a fun job. Teaching someone to drive, that sounds cool. And then the longer I've been in it, my position has changed. So I think it depends on your position as an instructor. If you're someone that's in this for a 9 to 5 that wants to make as much money as possible, well, A, you probably sit around podcast, but B, you're going to be much further down towards the press break end of the spectrum. But the more you care, the further up you're going to be. I think that as instructors, we should be doing something in each of those boxes. So we should be providing more experience and giving more situations where we can. We should be having deeper conversations. We should be promoting some aspects of road safety as well. And then also we should providing some resources. So I think the instructors that care should be more towards that side. The ones that don't, well, they're going to sit where they want to sit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember Chris Benstead talking about this, that we're all sort of on different parts of our journey. And I think it was interesting how you said when you first came into the industry, this wasn't necessarily, we're just like trying to learn how to do the job, really. And I think that's important to remember when we talk about this, that as much as I would love people to get out there and promote road safety and do whatever they can for, towards that kind of that next level of sort of kind of road safety, I do think we have to be conscious of people just being at different points in the journey. Like we're both like got to that point where we're quite experienced in the car, and so then we've got that, I suppose, brain space and availability to kind of push something else. Whereas if you're still kind of learning your trade, maybe it's a case of, yeah, let's be aware of it. Let's try and do something, but maybe don't beat yourself up about not being Mr. Campaigner or maybe having these great coaching conversations, because it takes time. And I think you've got to kind of learn that. So just going through these three different sort of kind of pronged approach, I kind of want to start off with the resources, actually, because and like I said, I mentioned earlier about your series on the podcast, and I think a lot of those resources are come from there. But what resources would top your list of giving to pupils? So, like, what resources would you really recommend to pupils?
So this isn't a plug, but if anyone listening goes to the Instructor Podcast website, so www.theinstructorpodcast.com, you'll see a tab that says Vision Zero. On there, I've got links and lists to a whole host of resources that you can use as an instructor, but also you can share with your students. But I think a lot of these resources, they depend what's right for the student. So in terms of the ones that I use and top my list, I think there's three. You've got and I'll touch on these and you can come back as you want. So you've got the Honest Truth, which for those that don't know, it's a series of videos that we can watch in the car as students. We've got Drive Fit, which is one that I send to all my students and potentially where appropriate their parents as well, which is a longer video. So it's not appropriate necessarily for in car, but it's really good quality stuff. And then I've also got Fresh Drivers UK, which is Sophie Lydon, that does a lot of campaigning for road safety, talks about tyre safety, and also focuses a lot on fresh drivers, new drivers, and how they get on with car maintenance and getting into garages. So I share that with them as well. They're kind of the big three that I use in car and out of car.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. I think they're all fantastic. And so which one of these do we talk about first? The one that actually I use Honest Truth, and I definitely want to come back and talk about that in a minute. But actually, the one that sort of sparked my interest was the when you mentioned about parents and sometimes offering this to parents, because and the episode on your podcast, and I can't remember the name, so you're gonna have to remind me of the lady was talking about her daughter had died, and there was a part about that she talked about that if I'd have known, like if I'd have known what I know now, I wouldn't have let her get in that car, and that hit me a little bit, because I thought, actually, yeah, like who, like I'm like this with my daughter because I do know, but it's this, yeah, they don't know. People don't, they're not like aware of how dangerous it is and the risks and the death rates and stuff. So is there anything we could be doing better to inform parents? Because I think they will have a huge influence post test on their child's behavior in the car.
Yes, but like a lot of stuff when it comes to us, it depends. I think I mentioned the Drive Fit resource there. That's a great one to send to parents because it's a really well produced video where they're talking about all aspects of driving. So talk about drink driving, the pressure of having people in the car, the talk about the driving test, the hazard perception. You know, it's a really interesting video. It is 40 minutes long, but it's also broken down. There's like mini videos where it's broken down. I think it's a 5 separate videos. And I think where we can, that's a great resource to send to parents. Now, just from my experience, I've had some parents that have just ignored it. I've had some that have watched it but not really commented, just said they've watched it, and I'm not going to think they're lying about that. And I've had some that have watched it and got back to me and spoke about it. And I think that we can't expect everyone just to jump on board because we're saying do this. You know, it's almost like this podcast because we're talking about road safety. Not everyone listening is going to go, "Oh yes, right now I'm going to go campaign." There'll be some people that go that far. There'll be others that ignore it, and there'll be everyone else in that spectrum, and that'll be the same with parents. So I think that's a really good resource. But I think the single biggest thing we can do is be open and be available, and try not to be judgmental, because that's that parent that's been letting their kid drive them to work every day or to school every day, and that journey's going fine. Why would that parent think about anything else? Because what they're seeing their kid do is a really good drive to work every day. They're not a trained instructor, but they are giving the student, the kid, that experience. So why would they go, oh, well, what about this and what about this and, you know, all this kind of stuff? So we have to be non-judgmental and not overly criticize, maybe critique, but not criticize what they're doing, and just be open to them and not pushy. I think that's the thing. When we start pushing our opinions on people and forcing it down their parents, they're just going to shut down or go elsewhere. So I think it's a really difficult balance, but like I said, you'll get some that embrace it and some that reject it, and everywhere in between.
Yeah, and that is always the case in life, isn't it? You said about sharing it with your parents. I'm just intrigued. How do you share that with your parents? With
Um,
your parents, their parents.
I have actually shared it with my parents and my dad because he needs it. But if I've had communication with a parent, you know, because sometimes the parent will get in touch first and they'll, you know, book the lesson, or sometimes they'll check in how the kid's doing. I will say, is it okay? I'll send you this video. And I don't think I've had anyone that said no yet. Like I said, there's some that won't watch it, but I don't think anyone said no. So I tie in with that. If I haven't had contact with the parent, I'm not someone that's going to reach out to the parent behind the student's back, if you like. So I'll sometimes talk to the student and I'll say, um, this is a video, it's aimed for you and your parents. Can you share this with them as well? And, you know, depending on how that conversation goes, I might say, oh, do you want me to share it with them instead? Because sometimes that student won't feel comfortable because of the attitude of their parent or guardian. So I'll say, can I share it instead? And they'll say, yeah, I'll get them to message you. And I've had that a couple of times where a parent said, oh, so and so asked me to message me. And then I've gone, okay, yeah, cool. I wanted to send you this. Is this okay? So I think that, again, whatever way works, and there'll be times where the students actually know, I don't want to give it to my parents, or you ask them to when they don't, whatever. Again, you can't force it, but it's just encouraging it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, if you affect someone, then great. The Yeah, it's interesting. Just I was intrigued to see how you went about that, and it's that being proactive and sort of kind of trying to interact. And I think there's probably we're talking about road safety today, but there is also like a business element to this, where I would say even if they don't watch it, I would be aware of the fact that, oh well, maybe I've chosen a good instructor here, like for my kid, because at least like he cares enough to be doing this, even if I don't care about it as much as he does, like he does, and that's great. So I think there's probably a recommendations and a business element to that. Not that necessarily why you should be doing it, but it's a nice bonus to what we do.
Sorry, I'm interrupting, but to me, it probably should be part of why you're doing it. It's a different reason, but we need to look after his business as well. I mean, I'm sure you're in community Facebook groups where they'll ask for instructors and someone will say, "Oh, go with so and so. He gave me a copy of the highway code." And I'm thinking, yeah, great. Did you read it? But then I also think, right, well, how good is it when you get recommended and they say, "Oh, go with so and so. He sent me videos of this thing and he sent my parents videos and he, we did this thing on the show or whatever." I know you want to get in that later, but you know, it's all that stuff as well. It makes you stand out. Now, obviously, if everyone then went and did this, we won't stand out, but the roads would be safer. And I think the other thing I'll just touch on there and how we can get it across to parents, Mark, it's not just keeping it confined to us and the car. It's putting it on our social media as well. And yeah, you could put that post out on social media saying, "Here's an awesome video for Drive Fit. If you're thinking of having lessons or currently having lessons, definitely give this a watch. It'll help keep you safe." However you want to phrase it, you might get 250 people that see it, and you might get 5 people that watch it. And of those 5 people, 2 people might not die because they've watched it. I class that as a win.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about that before with road safety is, um, and it was one of the sort of kind of things I was going to come on to where maybe people sort of kind of, I don't know, they kind of like have this could potentially have this attitude towards like how can I make a difference? Like how like I'm just a driving instructor on my own sort of kind of thing. How can I make a difference? And is that your sort of kind of answer to that then? Like that if you've got an instructor going, well, I'm not going to be able to change government policy, for example, and situations like that, would that be your answer to them?
100%, because it's how I feel as well. About, when I go back to look at when I first started the Instructor podcast, it was one of my biggest things. Who am I to do this? What difference am I going to make? I can remember when I first released the podcast, I went on to Dipod, and I can remember talking about social media on there, and they shut me down immediately and started talking about all the negativity on there. And I'm like, okay, and right, so this is the people I'm up against, the people that are shutting me down. And you'll have experienced this when you put stuff on social media, and sometimes you get the aggro back, you get the negativity, and I understand if people don't want to do it for that reason. But if I said to you now that all your social media you're going to post out, you're going to save a life this year by doing that, is it worth it? Well, that's for you to decide, but for me, it is. Now, we'll never know if we've saved that life. That's the thing. We'll never know. We only tend to know when the negative thing happens, but you never know who's reading that post. I'm still surprised to this day. I get random messages about stuff and, "Oh, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this." I'm like, never even knew you read, never even knew you listened. And it just makes a difference. And I think that's all we can do. We can't impact everyone, but we can impact someone. And you have to have faith in what you're doing and it's impacting someone. And in fact, the one thing last thing I chuck in there, if you're thinking that, the chances are you're someone that's been impacted by something you've seen on social media, but not told the person. So maybe you can become that person that goes, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to comment or I'm going to message and say thank you." And you take time out of your day to thank that person. And then you never know, that might get reciprocated to you one day.
Yeah, interesting. I must admit, maybe I'm going to do that. I'm going to go find a post that I liked and comment saying thank you for this.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it does encourage people to post more, I suppose. So let's bring it back round to the honest truth because I think that's a biggie for me when it comes to delivering road safety in the car. The we actually sort of kind of use the honest truth framework in our workshop to sort of kind of promote it and help people have a framework to sort of kind of deliver road safety. And it's a fantastic app. And for me, actually, and I know you sort of the whole premise around your series was trying to bring like the road safety sector and the driving instructor sector together. And for me, actually, the honest truth is probably the only road safety organization that fully embraces driving instructors. I accept that the others are coming there, but they sort of kind of see the benefit of driving instructors and the unique position that we have that as road safety experts, we're the only sort of kind of road safety experts that get that amount of one-to-one time with a learner driver, and they see the benefit of that, and the fact that we could make a change on the road for the next generation of drivers. So yeah, I think Honest Truth's fantastic. Like you're quite new to using Honest Truth in a sense, aren't you? Like in the last maybe year, would you say?
Can I touch back on what you said first?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I feel like something I've learned over the past 6 to 9 months, it relates to what you've said there. And yes, fully endorsing Honest Truth, fully embrace what they're doing, and they are the only one that's doing what you said, that's fully embracing our sector. But I think it's important that I mention why the others aren't. And this is what I've kind of learned over the last 6 to 9 months, or at least part of the reason why they aren't. You look at someone like Road Peace or Break, their budget is very, very limited. They're small organizations that appear big because of the amount of work they do. And when they speak publicly, they cannot, or very, very rarely, will speak to a niche because they have to reach as many people as possible. So they cannot do things just for driving instructors. So, and it took me a while to realize that, because I came into the driving instructors versus road safety sector, and that's how I thought of it. But then when I speak to them, I realized, well, they can't, but they're always willing. Whenever I ask anyone to come and speak to, they're always willing to do it. So I just felt like I kind of wanted to put that little caveat on there. But I would also add the word yet, because there are certain things in play, and it changed a little bit, and there's some interesting stuff coming up. But in terms of Honest Truth, it's not so much I'm new. I used it a while ago. I had some issues where I stepped back a little bit from some of the extra stuff that I was doing on lessons, and unfortunately, at the time, I considered the Honest Truth as an extra thing rather than part of what driving lessons should be. And then I came back into it. But yes, I think it's a great resource. I think that I love what they do. I love Ollie Taylor, who's one of the guys behind it. I think that he's so passionate about it. I've heard him speak passionately about instructors before. I was at the Young Driver Focus, and this ties in what you were saying. I was at the Young Driver Focus when he was promoting this, and someone from the audience put their hand up and said, but I know a driving instructor that wouldn't ever do this, and they're complaining, rah, 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 and all they shot him down. And it felt really nice to have someone standing up for us. So going back to what you said there, that's what it feels like. It feels like the Honest Truth are bridging that gap. They are supporting us, and not just supporting us, they are standing up and shouting about the good work that, let's say, some of us do.
Yeah, it's interesting how you describe that sort of kind of the like when you talked about Road Peace and Break, and when I'm sort of kind of thinking about it, I don't even think it's necessarily their job to provide content for us. That their job is to provide content for their audience. So in Road Peace's situation, it's for road safety, but particularly for sort of kind of post crash victims, and then for Break, obviously like a road safety message. I think it's our job to utilize those resources how we can, not necessarily expect them to develop something like the Honest Truth has developed for us. And it is a fantastic resource, and it's great that. But I think, yeah, if I go find those resources and say, how can I use that, not how can they help me, if that makes sense. I think that would be my method.
100%, 100%. And, think about Facebook. Almost all of us use Facebook, right? Facebook isn't designed for driving instructors, but we adapt it to use it for what works for us. We recently spoke about a book on coaching that I've forgotten what it's called, An Introduction to Coaching by Christian Van N. And he, it wasn't for driving instructors, but we can take out of it what we can take out of it. And as you said, the same with Road Peace and Break and Project Edward. It's not aimed at us, it's aimed at a whole, but we can still go in and take out what we can use, and it's free. Take out what we can use and go and put it into our business, our lessons, our mindset.
Yeah. So one of the things I like to get across in these episodes is like down to the kind of nitty gritty of how. So for example, with the Honest Truth, because I think there are different ways to do this. And so I'm intrigued on how you deliver the Honest Truth in the car with your pupils. Like, how do you go about it?
I just do what feels right at the time. That's kind of how I run my life, which isn't necessarily the best way. I'm not going to profess to be imperfect at it, but I often just wait for an opportunity. And my mind's gone blank. There's one on seatbelts, so often that can be covered on the first lesson. I'll just find a way to kind of shoehorn it in a little bit. It all gets covered, but I think and look, this is me looking after me a little bit, and I think it's important we do this as instructors. Sometimes we have to work in a way that suits us as well as a student, and the way it works better for me, rather than working to a specific framework, which I do use sometimes. But it's like, okay, I'm just going to get this in where I can. There are times where I've had a conversation with a student that might be a long conversation, could go on for a while, we're at side of the road, that explains a lot more than the video would do. And I'll go, I'll tell you what, let's just watch that video. And then we watch it, and we've covered it all already in detail, but it's like, okay, now we can tick that off. So it's not the tick box exercise, but if we'd already covered it, so like, okay, let's cover this now. So I think it's just as with most stuff I do, it's what feels right at the time.
Yeah, I think there's merit to watching the video, having had the conversation, because it reaffirms it. It's them getting that information from someone else as well. So it's kind of like, now I've got two sources of people telling me this information, so it must be true. The it it's interesting. I think there are different ways to go about the way you deliver it, and I actually quite like the way that you suggested it, because it makes it quite organic. Doesn't feel like a thing you're trying to push on the pupil. You've gone, oh, actually, as we're talking about this, or as you've said you're tired coming into the lesson, let's watch the tiredness video. And I think actually over a course of like a series of lessons, most of the truths are going to naturally come up if you're listening for those moments, and so they become quite nicely integrated into your lesson, rather than feel like this like jarring moment of, right, it's time for honest truth time. And
Sorry to give. What time is it?
yeah.
Honest truth time.
And I can see how there probably are some truths that you might have to like just introduce, or maybe even make the theme of the lesson, or because you want to have that conversation, so you do maybe show the video at the start and then bring that in around. But I think it's like you said, whatever works for you, whatever works for your pupils. One thing Ollie always likes to talk about is it's like every truth for every pupil, so that you don't pick and choose your truths, basically. So you don't go, well, this pupil needs this truth and this pupil needs, like, everybody gets everything. So I like that concept. And I also think it's just important to kind of mention, just from a point of view, how I maybe would deliver this in the car is, and this may seem obvious, but I've seen it not done, is to make sure you're having conversations. So don't just watch the video and go, right, tick, I've done that. It's really important that you use those coaching skills that we have to dig into what your pupil thinks about what they've just seen and what they've just watched. And that's where the learning will happen, not necessarily watching the video. The videos for me are a fantastic, almost like an icebreaker, like a way of bringing in the conversation. It's something I used to really struggle with before I had Honest Truth, actually, was sometimes broaching some of these topics, because they can be a bit awkward, particularly if you have a reason. Like if you've maybe got people who you're maybe like suspicious that they might be using drugs or something like that, and you think that might be a problem post test, to sort of kind of bring that up and go, hey, are you a druggie? It's a bit awkward. So to be able to kind of just show them this video without any judgment or without any sort of kind of accusations can be a nice way to sort of kind of bring it in. So yeah, I would, for me, I know there's loads of resources available, and I think we should be hitting this from different angles, like you've said. But I think actually, if there was somebody listening that isn't necessarily delivering road safety in the context of road safety versus just like teaching someone to drive safely, I think this would be my first port of call to go to.
Yeah, I think I would agree, and I think I will kind of touch on a couple of points there. I think in the time I've used the honest truth, and again that was over two separate periods, I think I've had one person that said no to watching their videos, and this is where I kind of want to reach out to instructors a little bit and say that if that person happens to be the first person you ask, or like one of the first people you ask, don't let that put you off. Because maybe there is a handful of people that don't want to watch a video. That's fine. It's not the end of the world. You can take a different approach with them. And I don't think that that's a big problem, but I can imagine how, well, I know how demoralizing it is. You know, you say, oh, tell you what, let's watch this. But I also think that part of it is how you come across with it. You know, so if you're trying to get across this honest truth video and you're going, right, today we're going to watch this video on this thing, and you're going to sit there, and then I'm not watching that. But if you go, oh, you know that thing you just said? Cool. Can we just watch this video? It's about 2 minutes long, but I think you'll learn something. They're much more likely to engage. So I think a lot of it is down to our enthusiasm. I think the other thing I will just touch on, because we're speaking about Ollie a little bit there, anyone that doesn't have the honest truth yet, go and watch or listen to something that Ollie's done, talk about it, find out more. If you're unsure, go and find out more. Don't just listen to us tell us how we do it. Listen to the person behind it. And I think it's £7.50 a month. There's ways to get it for a fiver. There's ways to get it for free. Go and look up how to do that. But for me, there is absolutely no reason for someone not to try it. You know, if you're going towards the higher end of that road safety spectrum that we spoke about, rather than just teaching people to brake, then there is no reason not to try it. But also, as I said, don't be discouraged if you do get the odd person that's like, actually, I don't want to watch a video today. It's fine. That's their choice.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd actually add to the whole Ollie thing is if you're really unsure, just send him a message, because he will be happy to have a conversation with you about how it can benefit your driving lessons. And he's Ollie's great, and he's just so enthusiastic, and yeah, a credit to kind of the road safety sector and our industry. So yeah, definitely. So sticking with resources at the moment, and we've kind of mentioned like brake and road piece. Are there any other, and I actually maybe wanted to sort of kind of dig into those a little bit more, and maybe how you use those?
Well, you kind of asked me for my main one. So there were those two, the Drive Fit, there was Honest Truth, and then there's Fresh Drivers UK. That's the one that I send to all my other students. That's run by Sophie Lydon. It's essentially social media. She does more than social media, but the stuff for learners is social media based. It's based around garage anxiety. You know, so I remember when I passed my test and I had to go to garage for the first time. It's like, what on earth is this big place that's got big tires and men that are covered in grease that know what they're talking about? And I don't, Dad, you know, it was like that. But so she's kind of helping with that. She talks really well about car maintenance and in particular tire usage and stuff like that, and she's got a really nice kind of natural vibe to her, so she comes across well with the youth, so like probably we don't potentially. So that's something that I just share with them. I share their social media accounts. It's on the apps that I use, so it's on my resources, and I usually send it directly. And sometimes if there's a specific video that I've seen, I'll send them that, but I always point them in the direction of her. And I will get some students to come back to me and go, oh, I saw Sophie say this thing the other day. And I just find that lovely, because again, you're not going to get every student that embraces it, but you'll get some that watch it and you'll get some that really embrace it. So I think that's one that I would recommend, where everyone sends their learners specifically to the stuff she's on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, I know. I 100% agree. I think Sophie's great. I would actually quite like to take Sophie with me every time I go to a garage, just to hold my hand and like let me and help me through the situation. Yeah, and so it's quite interesting actually, because listening to that, I can imagine some instructors going, "Well, what's a garage got to do with road safety?" And I wonder if it's just worth talking a little bit about the safe system, that for anyone that doesn't know. Please don't make me list them.
How many can you name?
I really can't. I'm rubbish. You did this on a podcast and said pause it, and then name them, and I was like, oh no, I can't name them. I'm rubbish with it.
I'm trying not to look up because I got them up there, but I always forget one. So you've got safe roads, safe vehicles, safe speeds, post-crash care, and safe road users, which is us. Yes, so that was the one I nearly forgot. So you've got those five, and that's what the safe system is. it's using that to get to Vision Zero. So for anyone who doesn't know, Vision Zero is the goal of zero road deaths. Well, not just zero road deaths, zero road harm, actually, by 2050. And that's using that safe system. So creating safe roads, safe speeds, safe vehicles, safe road users, and improving post-crash care. So when you're talking about where garages fit in, that's going to fit in with safe vehicles, you know. But I think where it actually ties in a little bit potentially is if you've got your first car and something doesn't quite feel right about it, and you're really anxious about going to the garage, you're potentially going to delay going to the garage because you don't want to go there. Well, maybe that's then going to cause a bigger problem, you know, and have a potentially disastrous result. But it's things like making sure your tires are right. So you know, like there was something Sophie spoke about on something with me recently, where you know the minimum tread depth. You know, it's what we teach on the when we cover the show me tell me questions on driving lessons rather than car maintenance on driving lessons. We cover the show me tell me questions. 1.6 millimeters. Well, why not show them and explain and use Sophie's videos to demonstrate why actually 3 millimeters is where it should be. You shouldn't really be glowing below that, and explain why, and let Sophie explain why, you know. And I think that's where that comes into it. That's going to help create safe roads because you'll have the new drivers that aren't afraid to go to the garage to get stuff checked out, that aren't afraid to get the tires changed early when all their mates or their dad says, well, you're all right till 1.6 or whatever. So I think that's where it ties in.
Yeah, I think actually it's quite interesting because I think it's maybe even just making people aware that car maintenance is a safety thing. Because I think before I was a driving instructor, I don't think I would have considered that. It was a can I afford this sort of thing, and or do I just turn the radio up and make that sound go away? And it is interesting how people don't necessarily see it as that they're driving around this vehicle that potentially, if it doesn't perform the way you want it to perform, could be really dangerous. So I think it is making, and like you said, letting Sophie do the work for you and via social media. So just with going back to the safe system, which parts of that do you think driving instructors should be getting involved with?
Should and could. Should we have gone at that roundabout? Could we have gone at that roundabout? Um, we can get involved with all of it. Depends where you're on that spectrum we spoke about before. Again, it's a difficult one to answer definitively, and I don't want to be preachy, but you know, there's ways to be involved with all of it, and I think that if you've got the time, do it. If you only want to focus on the safe driver aspect, that's completely fine because that is our role. But if you have time to reach out to Road Peace and campaign on their behalf and share their resources with Arna Learner, you know, they've got I struggle with this word, in memoriam page on their website, which you know has photos and descriptions of people that have died in road traffic collisions, and it's not something that I'm going to show every learner, but I'll mention it quite often. And there are times I've shown it on a lesson and it brings it home. So we can use those resources on lessons, or we can campaign for them, or we can raise funds for them. You know, when we talk about safe speeds is something we can cover in lessons quite comfortably. You know, legal speed doesn't mean appropriate speed. So we do the appropriate speed. You look at safe roads, again, we can campaign. There's the app that's out there, Fix My Street. You know, people complain about the potholes or stuff wrong in the street, but generally when I tag it in Fix My App, it's usually fixed within a few weeks. Oh, I'll say fixed. They do the pothole on it again, it's bad in a few weeks, but you know, they attempt to fix it in a few weeks. So I think that there's ways to get involved with them all. Our priority should always be creating safe road users. It has to be the priority on that. But and if that's all you do for me, then that's great. You know, as long as you go as far as you can within that. But I think there's ways to get involved with all aspects.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of see that in, and you're right. Obviously, we should be like creating safe drivers is key. And then for me, even if it is just like sharing some of these things on your social media, then that's the thing you're doing rather than and could you do more? Yes. Could you do less? Yes. But at least it's something. But it's interesting actually when we talk about Road Peace that obviously their side is post crash care. But that doesn't stop them. also promoting like safer drivers
Yeah.
and doing that sort of kind of side. So I think it's almost an element of if you're involved in road safety, and absolutely we are as driving instructors, that maybe it's like, okay, you have your bit, but then why not help and support the other bits? So even like the police, for example, they're involved in like the law enforcement or enforcing sort of kind of road safety, but that doesn't stop them promoting like driving safely in the first place or promoting vehicle maintenance and situations. So I think it's that, it's like have the bit that you care that you're sort of kind of an expert in, I suppose, and then but then also promote the other stuff as well. And the one for me actually that I haven't done in the past that I now do more of since listening to your podcast is the vehicle maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's something that never it just didn't trigger with me to sort of kind of other than the show me tell me's like you said, I just it hadn't really gone, oh yeah, I'd had conversations about it, but now I take it a bit further. So I think it's quite good for find ways that you can take these things further to improve your lessons, I think is my motto.
Yeah, obviously, I'm going to agree. I think that where we can campaign and campaign publicly, we should do. Where we can bring it into lesson, we should do. I think the vehicle maintenance one is quite easy for us to bring into lesson because we're in the car. But I think it can be challenging. There will be some students that they don't care. They're not interested. But that's the culture. What is the background of that student? What car have they been a passenger in for the past 20 years? And has that car ever had a problem, a serious problem, because it hasn't been fixed? So if that's the culture they've had for 17 to 24 years, then why would they change that? And that's part of our role, not to necessarily change their minds, but to offer them an alternative. So the example I'll give is the walk around check. Like students, they come to my lesson, they know the first thing they do is they walk around the car to check it's in good condition. For anyone listening, that's not like a full 20-minute inspection. It's literally a walk around the car. Quick check to make the tyres are in good nick, no damage to bodywork, reg plates on, windows and mirrors okay. That's it. And there are sometimes that will be like, well, what's the point in this? I know you're not going to bring me a damaged car. And I'm like, how? How do you know that? You're assuming I'm not bringing a damaged car. And the example I always say to my students is, imagine if the student before you had damaged my tyre, and then you get in my car, and on your lesson, you bump the curb. So I jump out, and I look and I go, oh, you've damaged my tyre. You're going to have to buy me a new tyre. Well, if you'd have walked around the car beforehand, you'd have seen the tyre was damaged. And then you'd know, you'd be able to tell me, Terry, I'm not getting this car. Look at the state of this tyre or whatever. And I think that sometimes we have to show them why it's important and let them see that. But I don't think I've had anyone that has refused to do that. I don't think I've had anyone that has just like, this is stupid. I've had a few that took a little bit of persuasion, like I say, but I think that's a really good introduction to it, just to make sure that it's safe, and then hopefully they carry that on, post test when they're by themselves.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It kind of goes how to like talks about like how to change behaviors and as well, because you haven't just had that conversation with them. You're actually saying, no, I really think this is important, which is why we're doing it every lesson before we get in the car. And that really sort of kind of sends that message that, yeah, if you ever get in a car that's not yours, and also you should be checking yours regularly as well. It is, yeah, it's I love that, and I think it's when I first heard you talk about that, I was like, yeah, why haven't I been doing that? It's a good way of doing it, and actually, if you think about it, it's what examiners do. Like they
Yeah,
won't get in a car without checking it, and I've had that scenario where I have turned up to a test and there was a nail in my car that I didn't know about, whether I picked it up on the way there, because I definitely had checked, I always check my car before before
yeah,
test day. So I'd either picked it up on the way there or I'd picked it up on the previous lesson. Um, so we went round and the examiner found the nail and then we weren't going to test. And that's why they do that. And so it kind of shows that, yeah, why shouldn't your learners also be doing that check? Because that's the first time they get in the car. And it also kind of puts that mentality in, obviously, like I said, to check their own car. But if they ever get a hire car, they don't just assume that that car's like spot on, let's go for my drive. And I think, what I really like about it is that it's this idea that you're not just saying this to them. You're not saying like this is a thing you should be doing. Like when you do the show me, tell me questions, for example, you might be teaching checking the engine oil, and then you say, well, you should do this every now and like however often you want to suggest. But the you're actually doing it with them. And I think that's the same with all of that sort of stuff. Like take them to the gap, like the petrol station, and check the tire pressures. Get them to fill up your windscreen washer and then get them to empty it out with when practicing it. And I think the more practical you can make these things, the more you can actually just make it like this is a thing we do, not a question you answer, that then you're sort of kind of on the right track with that.
Yeah. I mean, I've had it once where my tire, I got the alert on the dashboard saying that the tire was low on pressure, and I was about 2 minutes away from student's house. So I purposely pulled up and got them to come around and check it. Now that tire looks low. I'm like, yes, I've had it one time where they've actually been able to spot something on the walk around check. But I think it's just that, how do you know? How do you know it's safe to pull out? Well, you've got to check. How do you know your car's safe to use? Well, you've got to check. And for 30 seconds at the start of a lesson, and often, you think about where you park, you're going to be parked the driver's side on the road. So often, all they'll do is just walk the other way around the car. And I don't just mean walk around the front, but, walk around the car so that that's what they do anyway. It's just getting in the car, but walking a different way around it. And yeah, it's a simple one. And I think that starts that. So like what you were saying about the show me, tell me questions, it's involving them as much as you can and not making it about the show me, tell me questions. So that, the windscreen wipers are on the show me, tell me question. So we still want to show me, So when they then come to the lesson or a few lessons for the test and they say, oh, I've seen this thing on TikTok about questions I've got to do. And if I get one of these questions wrong, I'm going to fail my test. You can say, okay, let me ask them you. And then know them all already and more because they've been doing it for 3 months. It's just that you haven't labeled it as show me, tell me questions. And then you explain, despite what TikTok says, you don't fail for it. But that's another story.
I'm going to stop you before you go on a TikTok rant.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, it's interesting that the tire thing, because it's you're saying about walking around the car differently. It's something I do quite instinctively. I get in my car differently every now and again, just so that I can make sure I check that tire on the way around. And I think I almost every day, almost without like I'm not doing a full inspection, but I have a look at my tires and I just kind of go, is there any damage, any obvious damage? Is like how's the tread, that sort of thing. And I think as instructors, we've got this kind of unique. Obviously, we're coming up to driving tests. I can imagine all instructors are suddenly checking their tires a lot more. But it's building that habit, isn't it? Just like it's for me, it's default to just have a glance at my car as I'm going around it. Like, has anybody hit it while I've been parked? That sort of kind of thing, and you do that check. But I don't know if that is automatic for everyone. So that is, like you said, a conversation we need to be having. I just want to kind of finish off with the so we've kind of talked about resources and posting on social media and those other like people like that you go to, but we haven't really kind of discussed the in the car stuff. And I appreciate this is a huge topic that is kind of covered across all the other podcast episodes. But is there anything particular that you feel like you do in the car that helps with that kind of road safety element, other than like what we've talked about, sharing stuff?
Yeah. And again, it depends on the student, but yes. So I think it's conversations and practice. That's what it comes down to. So let's go with the practice first, because I know you've covered a lot of the conversational stuff in previous episodes, so we'll come on to that after. But it's we've all used that phrase, or I imagine we've all used that phrase, or at least heard it. I don't teach driving to pass a test, I teach safe driving for life. And I think, do we? Do we actually? Because what do we teach? We teach a test syllabus. We teach potentially now the syllabus that's on the Are You Ready to Pass campaign by the DVSA. Well, what's that campaign? It's Are You Ready to Pass? Well, is that teaching safe driving for life? Because you think about a driving test, the quality of drive you need to be able to do to pass a driving test isn't high. It isn't. Now, that doesn't mean that I couldn't fail it. I always ask the students, if I took 100 tests, how many would I pass? Most of them say 99 or 100. I reckon I passed 99. I reckon by the time I got to 100, I get complacent and bored. But it means that generally the skill required to pass a driving test is quite low. And look at how many bad drivers there are on the road. We need to create these safe drivers for that. So for that, we can put them in as many challenging situations as possible. And the example I always use to start is one that I think riles people up a little bit, but it'll get you more listeners. It's nighttime driving. Because at the minute, we're in the summer months, and there will be people that pass now having never driven in the dark. So if you've got a student that's passed having never driven in the dark, have you taught that student safe driving for life, or have you taught that student safe daytime driving for life? Because driving in the dark is very different. You know, it's think of that student or that driver when they get in the car and it's pitch black for the first time, and like, oh crap, where do I have my lights on now? What setting do I have my lights on? And now it's on dip. Do I need to turn it down? Do I need to lower the beam a little bit? And then this dashboard's really bright. How do I turn the light down on this dashboard? I can't see as far. When am I allowed to use my full beam? Because we haven't discussed this. It was just a show me question that my instructor told me about. And then I'm at this roundabout. I can see the cars, but I can't see where the driver's looking. And then there's a car behind me. I think it's a car. There's only one light. Is it a car? Is it a motorbike? All this stuff. And not just that, the fear of this is pitch black. This is different. Well, imagine if we'd given them that experience beforehand. And in fact, before I go any further with this, I will just say there is an element of this isn't applicable to every instructor. Not every instructor can do what we're talking about now. So, for example, for me at the minute, I can deliver a couple of lessons a month at 10 p.m. Doesn't affect my lifestyle at all. However, maybe you're someone that has to be up at 5 a.m. every morning. Well, you don't want to be delivering 10 p.m. lessons. I get it. Maybe you've got life commitments, whatever. And I'm not telling anyone to deliver 10 p.m. lessons. I'm saying this is something we could do. Where do you fall on that spectrum of, I just got a job and I want to create safe drivers? The closer you fall to creating safe drivers, the more of these experiences we give. So whether that's nighttime driving, as I kind of explained then, whether it's motorways, whether it's actual slip roads. I've used the example somewhere before, but one of my local test centres has a dual carriageway and it's got no slip roads on it. So anyone that's learning around that test centre, because of course, are you ready to pass? They're not going to learn at slip roads. So, but why not go a bit further down the road to where there are slip roads? Another one that, and again, I don't do this with every student, but I do it with some, the ones that are happy to do it. Multi-story car park, we play a game. You go up top, you find somewhere to park. You go down level, you find somewhere to park. You go down level, you find something, you go down till you get to the bottom, and you usually can't park. And of course, the lower down you go, the less spaces there are, the more chance you're going in between two cars. When we get to the bottom level, we usually have to go back up a level to park and then go and pay. And it's like, if you could do that in a multi-story car park, if you could drive for 3 hours on a motorway, if you can use slip roads on some of those horrible short slip roads, by the way, for example, on dual carriageways, how easy is your driving test going to be? And how well prepared are you going to be for post-driving test? So I think it's all about the situations we put people in. So we are teaching safe driving for life as best we can, because we can't do everything, rather than teaching people to pass a test.
Yeah, I love all of that and do most of it, and I think it's quite interesting that the bit you said at the end, actually, I think is the thing that maybe not makes the point, but also maybe kind of for anyone who's thinking, well, my pupils won't do that because they just want to pass the test and they'll see this as a waste of time. Which there can be the attitude, I suppose, and I think again, it goes back to what you were saying about earlier, how you sell it, but also it's that sort of kind of statement of, if they can do all of that, how easy is the driving test going to be? And I think that's the thing, is like, if you're putting them in this beyond test scenarios, the test is easy. It's because it actually is not on those really difficult, obviously they can be challenging roads, but yeah, if they've driven those roads at night, of course they're going to be able to do them in the day. And so I think it's that element of it's about just creating a good driver. And I always talk about the driving test as just a blip on the way. Like, if you consider what percentage of driving your driving test is, compared to your entire life. It's like 0.0000001%. So why is that what we're focused on? It is just a little hurdle that you have to get on the way. And if you create a good driver, they will get through that regardless. So yeah, absolutely. I would say go and find out what you can do in those areas. And I'm going to kind of bring this back as well to the business side of this as well. I think we should be obviously focused on road safety, but we are running businesses and driving skills. And I think again, if you're promoting this, if you want something to be like, I know people struggle to like, what can I put on my social media that's not a past photo? And I think if you want something to be posted on social media, that's it. It's like, oh, look at my pupil in the multi-story car park. Look at me taking my pupil out at 10 o'clock at night to do drive right road like a drive at night because that's where people die. Um, and I think you're posting that sort of stuff, you're going to get not only more customers, but the right sort of customers as well, the ones that you want to teach. And I actually took on your sort of kind of road, your nighttime driving idea, and I sort of wanted to make it a business sort of kind of idea as well, because that's just how my brain always works. And having this concept of having more than one pupil in that evening slot. So I put that evening slot out, and the idea being it like maybe have three pupils in the car, as a special sort of kind of 2-3 hour lesson. They pay slightly less because there's more people in the car, but actually you're getting paid more as an overall hourly rate because there's three people in the car, which maybe is then the motivation for going out in the evening and taking a bit of time out of your life. But I think also the reason I wanted to do that is because actually as well, a lot of times when they're in the car in the evening, they're in the car with their mates. Now these
Yep.
might not necessarily be their mates, but it is that element of now you can be distracted and we can talk, bring that into the conversation as well. So we're kind of having that sort of double whammy. We've there's a couple of things we've not actually done, but we've talked about is things like the motorway journeys. Again, maybe rather than just like popping on it depends where you live as well, this, but rather than just popping on a motorway for half an hour or so, maybe again get a couple of pupils together and go on a longer drive on the motorway. And so you can travel further because in the back you're still getting those experiences and learning. And you can turn it into like a road trip vibe. So maybe the person in the back is like in charge of the music and how's that distracting and situations like that. So I think maybe that sort of idea of merging pupils together, whether it's groups of friends or whether it's just something you offer and this is the date, can you make it sort of kind of thing, it is quite a good one. One of my instructors suggested this, and I'd love to go and do this, but I don't know whether we'd be able to manage it, was going out as a convoy of instructors, so 3 or 4, so instructors at the same time, and practice overtaking, like on rural roads, because again, it's the sort of thing we talk about, and we talk about doing it safely and making all these choices, but how often do they ever actually get to practice that? And I think the idea is you have the car in front going a bit slower, and then the next car behind makes a safer decision, because absolutely, like, are they, I don't want the first time they make that call to be without me, like being able to support them and guide them in that situation. So yeah, stuff like that is just like that sort of kind of group joining together thing, I think can be quite a good way of doing that. And you said about earlier as well, actually, how it's not viable for everyone. I think I can think of like single parents, for example, they're not going out at 10 p.m. But then maybe if it is viable for you, maybe you can be the instructor that offers it to other driving instructors, and they go, actually, this guy does this, go and have a lesson with him. And I know in my sort of area, I'm sure people would be like keen to sort of kind of like say, oh, actually, yeah, that's a quite a good service, like go and do a lesson with Phil in the evening. So yeah, I think it's just like thinking outside the box a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. And what I love about what you said there is what you've done is what I want people to do, if I'm being honest, is what I want people to do. I want them to hear my idea and go, oh, what can I do? And you've explored what you can do, because you're not going to be able to do everything. You won't want to do everything. You have to, as much as the lessons for the students, I stand by this, and I realize people will shoot me down for this. As much as the lessons are for the students, they also have to be right for you as well. So here's my example of something I don't do. I don't do McDonald's drive-through. I know a lot of instructors actually use that as a really good example of real life driving. I hate McDonald's drive-through. I used to work there. I spent 5 years at McDonald's. I think that's where it comes from. I never go there myself. I park up and I go in if I'm going to work. I never ever use a drive-through. So That's not an offer from me. Would I do it if a student really requested it? Yeah, I probably would, but I don't want to. So I'm not doing it. Now people can shoot me down for that, say I'm not road safety or whatever, that's fine. But it's what's right for you as an instructor as well. So what I would say is listen to this, think about what you're offering now and go, what one more thing can I offer? Because if you start offering 20 things and all of a sudden it can come overwhelming, but you go, oh, could I offer 10 p.m. lessons a night? Now, keep in mind, when we get to autumn, that moves to 7 p.m. And then by the time you get to winter, it moves to probably 4 or 3 p.m. But could I do 2 p.m., 10 p.m. lessons over the summer? Could I allocate 2 days a month that are going to be motorway lessons? Is there a multi-story car park I can use? Is there a city centre that I can go and start taking students through this city centre? Can I start doing some, whereas, like 5 p.m. lessons, you might avoid certain areas because of traffic. Should I start actually embracing those areas and putting students where they've got that mini roundabout where when the could and should opportunities come, you've got to take the could because there is no should because it's that busy. It's what can I add in to make my students safer? And then when you've got that one, maybe add another one. And every time you do that, you're moving along that road safety spectrum. And I think that's all we can do. All we can do as instructors is go, what can I do to help my students not die after a test? And everything that we tick on them boxes is helping them not die. And
That's
that all comes down to how much you care.
that's the clip for social media. So
I'm going to get shot down for that one. Whatever.
So wait, there was a couple of things actually on that. What was interesting actually, and because I'd considered this when it becomes winter in the dark, and now you can do dark lessons. But actually, I think I would still be inclined to do the later lesson because the roads are different,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of it. Like driving at 5 p.m. in the dark is trickier, but actually probably trickier because you can't really now you've got a lot of cars and you can't really see them as well. But I think that the stuff that kills our teenagers on the road is rural roads at night when they're empty and they're going too fast.
Yep.
And so that you maybe can't replicate at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. because people are on the road with you and it's busy and you can't get up to those speeds. And I think that's maybe the place where maybe we still do the evening lesson because we're putting them in those different environments, and trying to sort of kind of create those situations. And the other thing I was going to pick up on is I feel like you're missing out on the McDonald's drive-through experience. I feel that there is no better feeling than getting an overtake on a McDonald's drive-through. Like when you choose your two lanes and you're behind a car and then you get there before him. There's no better feeling than getting that overtake happening.
I can think of many a better feeling.
um,
No, so I agree what you're saying about the rural roads at night. By the way, I agree with that. You are right.
Thanks. So I was gonna wrap up with what tips could you do, and maybe you can give me an extra one. But actually, I quite like your last one, which was pick one thing, and what one thing can you do differently. And I think we've talked about a lot of different things today with social media or things you can do in the car. And it can maybe sound overwhelming and to try and go and do it, and it will become overwhelming and then you'll not do anything. So a bit like what we do with learners, we don't chuck everything at them in one go. So maybe it is that sort of kind of pick one thing from what you've heard today or from your series on the podcast and go implement that one thing consistently until you and then you can pick another thing. keep building on it.
I think what I chuck in it does tie in with that is that this needs to become the norm. Like you asked before, what should the average driving instructor do? Well, I think it was Michael Gove that once said, everyone should be above average at maths, which is impossible. What we need to do is raise that average. So the ones that are down here that are just teaching people how to brake, well, they're always going to be there. We can't do an awful lot about them. We kind of have to rely on the DVSA to eventually sift them out of the system, but they're always going to be there. But we can drag the average up by doing more. And I think more of this stuff needs to become commonplace on lessons, not as I used to view it and described it earlier as extra. That 10 p.m. lesson for me in a year, that won't be extra. That's just going to be what I do as a driving instructor. The motorways, it's not extra, it's teaching someone to drive safely. Now, as you've said, as we've said, that you might not be able to do all these things, and that's fine, you do what you can. But starting somewhere and making that become the norm of your driving school, not the extra that you do. So that average instructor is being dragged up to your standard, not dragged down to the person that just teaches you how to brake.
I love that. And I think we're going to finish on that note.
Yeah.
Because I do. Let's raise the average. I feel like I'm stealing one of your taglines to finish there.
Just keep raising standards. Yeah. I might switch it to average. I like that.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I think it's been excellent, and I'm hoping everyone will have something they can take away from today. So yeah, thanks for coming and joining us, Terry.
Always a pleasure, Phil. Always a pleasure.
Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops.